The road stretched out like an endless ribbon beneath the old wagon wheels, groaning with each turn, and Thomas felt the heavy silence hanging in the air as though the forest itself was holding its breath. The children huddled together in the back, watching their mother with eyes that spoke volumes of fear and longing. Every bump in the road seemed to jolt her fragile body, and each shallow breath she drew sent fresh worry cutting into Thomas's mind. He had no map for this path, no guarantee that the next village would even have the help they needed, but he knew turning back was not an option. He glanced over his shoulder at them, 4 pairs of young eyes fixed on him, with something between doubt and desperate hope, and his heart tightened. He had never been a father, never thought he would carry such a weight, yet here he was, suddenly the anchor to a family of strangers who had nowhere else to go. The eldest boy sat close to his mother, holding her hand tightly as though willing strength into her frail fingers. Wanwei. Thomas could see the boy was fighting hard to be strong, to act like the man of the family, but beneath the surface, he was still a child torn between courage and fear. Thomas respected that. He knew what it meant to force yourself to carry a burden too heavy for your shoulders, and it reminded him of his own lonely battles with life. By midday the sun broke through the trees, pouring warmth over the road, but it did little to lift the weight inside the wagon. The youngest girl had drifted into an uneasy sleep, whimpering softly now and then, while the other 2 children sat close together, whispering words Thomas couldn't quite catch. He didn't interrupt. Sometimes children needed their own secrets, their own way of coping with the chaos around them. Instead, he kept his eyes on the road and his mind on their next step. He remembered a small town a day's journey away, a place where he had once traded tools and fixed wagons. There had been a doctor there, a kind man, if Thomas's memory served him right, and that fragile thread of hope was enough to guide his weary heart forward. As the wagon rattled along, Thomas began to speak, his voice steady and calm, partly to ease their tension and partly to keep himself awake through the weight of responsibility. He told them stories, not of grandeur or glory, but of small victories, of nights when he had nothing but the stars for company and mornings when the rising sun felt like a miracle in itself. The children listened, some with cautious curiosity, others with hidden smiles, and slowly the air grew lighter. He noticed the eldest boy relaxing, his shoulders dropping just a little, though he still clung to his mother's hand like it was the last tether to safety. It was then that Thomas realized this journey was no longer just about finding help for the wounded woman. It was about building trust, stitching broken hearts back together, and showing these children that not everyone in the world would abandon them. As night approached again, the sky painted itself in hues of orange and deep purple. Thomas pulled the wagon off the road and built a small fire. The children sat close, eyes wide at the flickering flames, while he handed them bits of bread and dried fruit from his pack. They ate quietly, hunger gnawing away at their fear, and Thomas noticed how carefully the eldest divided his share, ensuring the youngest got the most. Thomas admired that unspoken sacrifice. It reminded him of himself in his younger years, scraping through with little more than grit and determination. When the fire crackled low and the stars began to pierce the night sky, Thomas wrapped another blanket around their mother, checking her pulse, whispering softly, "Hold on, just hold on." The eldest boy's eyes filled with tears, but he quickly wiped them away, not wanting his siblings to see. Thomas laid a hand on his shoulder and gave him a nod, an unspoken message that he didn't have to carry this alone anymore. The night deepened, the forest filled with distant howls and the rustle of unseen creatures, but within their small circle of light, something changed. For the first time since finding them, Thomas saw a glimmer of trust in the children's eyes. Maybe it was the warmth of the fire, maybe the fullness in their stomachs, or maybe the quiet assurance in his voice when he told them, "Tomorrow we'll reach the town. Tomorrow we'll find help." As they drifted into uneasy sleep, Thomas sat awake, staring into the flames, his mind heavy with thoughts. He had been a wanderer, a loner, a man who belonged nowhere, but now fate had tied him to this family, and he wasn't sure where the path would lead. But one thing he knew for certain: he could not and would not let them down. Friends, if this chapter has stirred your heart and kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure you subscribe to the channel. The journey of Thomas, the children, and their mother is only just beginning, and trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next.